of lore. Thank you for joining me for this installment of the Phyrexia All Will Be One story. Today, we get to finally find out what was going on with Teferi. If you remember, at the end of the Dominaria United story, he was hurtled through the blind eternities when the temporal anchor malfunctioned and he woke up on an unknown beach. So, this is where we find him. This is where he ended up after traveling back in time and meeting Urza. So, he's in an unknown place and time. Also, he's been stripped of everything, even his clothes. But at least he was alive, which was surprising to him. He was not expecting to survive the events of the temporal anchor failing. He decided he needed to head inland. He needed to find a way to return, to continue fighting the Phyrexians. He found the point where the beach gave way to coastal grass. A red stone arch that was ancient and weather-worn jutted upwards, marking a well-worn path. Teferi slumped against the arch. The adrenaline and shock from his ordeal had abruptly left him, and he was now utterly exhausted. The fact that he could feel all of this meant that he was here physically, not just in spirit. Also, Kea was no longer tethered to his mind. Something had gone very, very wrong. Teferi attempted to planeswalk, but it was no good. There was a twitch inside him, and then nothing but numbness. He was well and truly stuck. He took a moment to appreciate the beauty around him. Gentle waves and lazy gliding birds. Teferi attempted to shift time with his magic. Again, nothing happened. I guess they win, he muttered. Defeated, he went to sleep as the sun set. Nightmares assailed him. Krug, Argoth, being run through by a Phyrexian horror. Urza's tower, Teleria burning. He woke up in the moonlight, except there was no moon. Pale blue light was emanating from somewhere, though. Teferi resolved to find people. Shelter, food, sleep, laughter, these things were sorely needed, and clothing as well. He headed inland, and following some old cart tracks, Teferi recovered a bit of his power. He reached out with temporal magic to gain a sense of the history of this land. In the distant past, the people here were fishermen who plied the waters in brightly painted boats. In the more recent past, these boats lay sun-bleached and unused. The reality of what he was seeing hit home. He recognized those boats. He was stunned. This was Zalfir, his homeland that had been denied to him for the last 400 years. He could feel the void that Zalfir was trapped inside now. And looking up on the horizon, Teferi could see the void itself. Teferi continued traveling further inland, coming across a caravan. He hid it first to take their measure. He noticed the plain gear of common mercenary guards, but he realized he was too hungry and thirsty to wait, so he'd have to take a risk. He stepped out into the road and said hello. The first caravaner who saw him screamed and chaos broke out. Down the caravan line, people were crying out about attacks. Only the oxen remained calm. One of the guards demanded, "Who are you, unclothed in the middle of the road?" Teferi lied about being waylaid by coastal bandits, and the guards relaxed. It turned out she was in charge. "Get this man a cloak." "Worry not, friend. We took care of those bandits last night." Teferi was surprised and pleased at how well his deception had worked. She continued on. "I'm sorry to say we didn't find any of your party alive. I am Eshe. What's your name? You look familiar to me." Teferi had no idea how time worked in the void. How long had they been here? Would they remember him? He decided to continue with his deception. "I am Seifu, from Kippamu. I have one of those faces. It makes me a good merchant. Everyone trusts their friends, you know what I mean?" They walked together along the carts. "You haven't asked me about the dead," Eshe said. Teferi looked at her. "The dead?" "Your friends. How many were you traveling with again?" Teferi quickly used minor scrying magic to draw the answer from Eshe's mind. 10, he said. She responded, a tragedy. Don't worry, we'll take care of you. The next morning, the caravan guards yelled and lined up all the merchants. Teferi leaned over and asked the person standing next to him, is this normal? And got a response of no, don't trust the guards. They're actually bandits who slew our guards and now intend to sell all of our goods. Eshe walked up and told the talkative merchant to shut up and turned to Teferi, daggers in her eyes. She knew who he was. Eshe then made a speech to everyone assembled. She spoke of all the tragedy that had befallen Zhalfir, the Mirage War, the Keldon War, the Phyrexian invasion. She went down the line asking people about their losses, food, safety, homes, loved ones, all gone. Eshe linked everyone into a chain of grief, and it hung heavily about Teferi's neck. We suffered alone, except one of us fled this horror, but he has returned. Teferi, the snake. As she said this, she pointed at Teferi, and there was a wave of gasps. The guards and caravanners alike both grabbed onto him. Teferi pleaded, Eshe, please. She barked back an angry no and drove her spear straight for Teferi's heart. He spoke a single word, stop. He spoke the word not to the people who held him, but to time itself. Time slowed to a crawl, and Teferi sighed and sat down. Eshe was moving above him, impossibly slow. He waved a finger, and she temporarily returned to normal speed, stabbing empty air. She looked puzzled. Down here, he said. It took minutes for his words to reach her, and then all she did was start to reposition herself for another stab. But Teferi continued to speak, explaining that he had taken solace in raising a family, and he used that to forget what he had done to Zhalfir. He reached out and grabbed the head of Eshe's spear. The metal bit into his flesh, and he let his blood flow down into the soil. I don't expect forgiveness. I'm here to do what's right and keep Zhalfir safe. I'm going to release the spell holding you now. I need you to stop hindering me. He created a sphere of pure blue mana as a warning, and it floated in his palm. He released the temporal magic, and Eshe stumbled back. Regaining her balance, she angrily looked at him. Go away. Teferi nodded and left. He found no welcome in the cities that he went to, so he ended up finding a fishing village where he spent months living the simple life of a fisherman, pulling fish from the river. But there was a reason he chose this location. There was a magical ley line nearby, and on occasion, Teferi would try and use it to see if he could contact Kea through its power. However, he never got a response through the void. Teferi could only hide in the village for so long before word spread. A massive contingent of soldiers arrived seeking him out. Sidar Jabari led them. He was an old friend of Teferi's. You've returned to us, but where is the rest of our plane? Teferi was crestfallen. I'm sorry, Zhalfir is still in the void. Jabari waved it away. No more apologizing. We have bigger matters at hand. He leaned in closely to Teferi. You're not the only one who came in from the outside. We have another, a white-haired lady. We've trapped her in an amber prison. Jabari then showed Teferi a wide-brimmed armored hat that he immediately recognized as belonging to the Wanderer. Jabari revealed that immediately upon arriving at Zhalfir, the Wanderer had requested Teferi's presence. Wasting no time, Teferi and Jabari traveled together to Aku, where the Amber Tombs lay. This is where the biggest threats to Zhalfir were kept. And when they arrived, it was in chaos. Somehow, the Dark Mage Geographic had managed to escape his prison, shattering it in the process. General Mageda had been injured by the blast. Queen Wesna was already on the scene, and when she saw Teferi, she voiced her displeasure, but accepted that if she tried to have him executed, Phyrexia would win. Teferi inquired after the wanderer, and the queen withdrew a tiny piece of amber the size of her palm and tossed it at Teferi. He set it on the ground, and the queen had a temple mage release the wanderer. She was momentarily disoriented, but recognized Teferi. "How long have I been in there?" It turns out she had been trapped in there for an entire month. She quickly explained New Phyrexia's invasion. "I think we're too late." She tried to say more, but faded away and was gone. Teferi was surprisingly calm. He thought about the people of Zalfir, and then he thought about the Phyrexians. He grinned. It's not too late. All right, my friends, that's how this installment of the story ends. I hope that you enjoyed it. If you like what we're doing here, you can support the channel by joining the Patreon or the channel membership, or you can even now grab a t-shirt because we've got those available. Link down in the description and comments below. So big thank you to the channel's patrons and members. I will see you all next time for the final installment of the Phyrexia All Will Be One story. Until then, go enjoy some other videos on this channel, and remember, lore is life.